Hey, folks, welcome back to the Agency Freedom Podcast. We help you achieve freedom in every aspect of your business. As we have been doing for a while, this is another solo episode talking about the topic of how to break into commercial insurance. We get this question, I should say, probably the most common of any question that I get asked by any of my peers in the industry, other than maybe, hey, how do you choose this piece of gear for whatever? Because I have finally a good setup that really proud of from a content perspective. But getting into the commercial game, getting out of being so dependent on personal lines, that is something we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. A little bit of backstory on the way that things came about with Riskwell. We started out obviously as a farmer's agency, and we were so, and indistinguishably so, I might add, for most of the 6 years that we were a farmer's agent. And in 2018, I wrote a huge account on the commercial side of things. It was a landscaping company, and it was the largest account I had written at that time, and for a few years was the largest account that I was able to write. It was about 160, 170,000 in premium that year, and it won me a big award. I got to stand on a stage and whatnot. Believe it or not, I was the number 3 commercial agent for all of Farmers Insurance in Texas that year. It's kind of crazy to think about it in the context of where we are now, because in order to be number 3 in the state of Texas, I think my total insurance premium for commercial was around $300,000. And it sounds absolutely bananas to say it that way, but that's where we were at that time. That was our frame of reference. That was really the beginning of the end for my complacency in personal lines, because I realized how many personal lines accounts it would take to match the revenue from that one commercial account. At that point in Texas, a fully matured personal lines account, 2 autos, a homeowner, an umbrella, and a toy of some kind, maybe even throw in a life insurance policy, you're looking at, average revenue on that is probably somewhere around $1,000 at that point, a fully matured normal personal lines account. And that one landscaping company by itself was more than $20,000 in revenue when all was said and done. And realizing you would have to write 20 personal lines accounts and retain 20 personal lines accounts to make up the revenue from this one commercial account. That was the beginning of the end for me. And at that point, I committed to getting myself ready to go in commercial insurance. I'm wired for it anyway. I like it better than personal lines. I don't have anything against personal lines agents or insureds. It just doesn't excite me. The way my brain is wired doesn't really align with personal lines. You have to be a volume shop. You got to be able to just churn through every single opportunity and move them from lead to prospect to suspect to closed won or closed lost, and have a really good automation game, because you're going to get a lot of rejection. You're going to get a lot of price shoppers that just don't care. And it's really hard to make a dent in the personal line side of things. So how do you break into commercial? How did I break into commercial? How do we become a commercial only shop? Well, it took a few years. Obviously, you guys have heard from me a few times on pieces of that journey. But what I did was start with one thing, one niche, one industry, and start to understand what needed to happen there. I took some classes. I started my CIC. I committed to myself that I was going to become a better version of my professional self, because make no mistake about it, folks, a commercial agent is required to do more, to know more, to have more resources, to be a higher caliber professional than a personal lines agent. It's not to say that we commercial folks are any sort of better than a personal lines shop. It just means that it's a lot more complicated and a lot more is required of it. You can be a very successful personal lines focused agent and not really understand the craft of insurance. If you're a good networker, if you're charismatic, if driven, if you can show up to the networking meetings and show up to ask for referrals, if you're really good at your talk track, you can be a very successful personal lines agent. You're not going to be a very successful commercial agent without having a deep and thorough understanding of at least some parts of our industry, being able to dissect a policy and talk about it in detail, being able to poke holes in the coverage of your opponent, in endorsements, in exclusions, in limitations, in class codes, being able to read a policy and just understand it quickly and easily, and being able to describe the way that things are in simple and easy to use terms to an insured. The only way I know that you're going to be able to do that successfully is if you start small, if you start with a single class of business. You've got to figure out exactly how you're going to write that business. Where are these people? Where are these decision makers? Where do they hang out? Where do they congregate? Where do they spend time? Where do they talk about these things, talk about industry things with their peer group? Is there a trade association? Is there a regular event? Are there channel partners that serve that industry that you can become friends with, that you can take to lunch, that you can say, hey, I am building out a focus in X industry, and it appears that you are a thought leader in this industry. May I take you to lunch and ask you some questions about your perspective on insert industry here? I don't know of a single person on planet Earth who's not just a complete jerk who is going to receive a request like that from a local peer and say no, because everybody likes sharing their thoughts and opinions and feelings on a professional level. People like knowing things that other people don't. And so when you go at someone with a simple ego stroke and say, hey, I've heard you're a thought leader, I would love to better understand insert industry here, may I take you to lunch and ask you some questions and just get acquainted with you in this industry? You're almost certainly going to get a yes. And then from that point, you get started thinking like that industry. You understand all of the they ask, you answer sort of question flow from Marcus Sheridan in his book that you should definitely have on your bookshelf. You put yourself in the position of the decision maker. You start to ask the questions that they are likely to ask, that person, that type, that profile of person is likely to ask. You get out of your insurance agent brain and literally put yourself empathetically into the profile of the person you're trying to reach. Because when you can learn to think like someone you're trying to reach, you're going to be much more effective in having meaningful conversations that don't start with, hey, can I quote your insurance? Because that's what everybody out there is doing. And no one out there doing it that way is having buckets of success. I promise you that. Once you get past step one, then you start creating content designed for that one class of business, that one profile of insured. And then you get someone to say yes. You start to become an expert, one account at a time. And after you have identified that account that you're going to win, then you ask them for referrals and let them know you want more clients like them. Now, the secret to this is picking someone that you actually like, that you connect with on a human level. Because if you're disingenuous when you say, I'd love to have more clients like you, if they don't believe you, if you haven't connected on a personal level, they're probably not going to give you great referrals. But you can ask them for more people like them and tell them flat out, I've really enjoyed our interaction. I'm looking to break into your industry. I would appreciate a referral to one or two colleagues that you know who would appreciate the kind of conversation that you just had with me. And once that happens, once you get that first person to say yes because they like you, and on a subjective human level, you have passed their know, like, and trust filter that everybody has, even if we don't talk about it, everybody has that filter. Once you've passed that initial filter, you have then made your way into the beginning stages of becoming a commercial focused agent. Because once that happens, you start to get access to that industry. You start to understand where you need to be, where your sponsor dollars should be spent, what channel partners you need introductions to, who you need to get to know so that you can figure out who the power players are. And then you spin up your content engine. That's when you invite them to have a conversation with you on camera, where you simply have a camera and a lapel mic or one of those handheld ones you get from Amazon for $150, connect it to your smartphone and go to that person's business and record short form content and give it to them and tell them, you don't have to tag me or anything. You can simply put this out on your socials to show that you are prestigious to your audience. And I'll do the same on mine because I would like to show you to my audience, and maybe you'll get some more business from my audience. Once you are associated with thought leaders in the industry that you are trying to connect with, you have instant credibility because you don't have to lie to someone and say, I'm doing the insurance for this thought leader. Just in the very nature of you being associated with them in a piece of content on a website, on a blog, on social media, in a podcast episode, whatever it happens to be. Once you are able to start to get credibility as a person of substance in that industry, the second, third, fourth, fifth things come along a lot faster. And then you're able to start creating content even more effectively in a talking head sort of basis, where you get your phone out and you're on location somewhere and you're going, hey, I'm here today at such and such location. Just wanted to share a quick thought with you. If you're in the industry, here's one of the things that I see being really common with the folks that I talk to in insert industry here. It's a 2-3 minute video at most. You throw it up on social media, you put it on your YouTube channel, you put it up on a blog on your website that you use to transcribe with Descript or a service like that, where you can take a video and rip a transcript out of it and throw it up on your website as a blog post with both a video and the transcription of that video. So the video in written form for people that like to read rather than like to watch. And SEO absolutely loves that stuff. When you're going in to plant that video transcript on your blog post, you can SEO optimize it for the keywords that you're looking for as far as click traffic. And then make sure when you have the title of the video on your YouTube channel, your title is what people are going to search for. Blank insurance tips. How to buy blank insurance. Problem with blank insurance, whatever it happens to be. The title of the video is what someone is typing into Google. Once you do that a few times, you'll start to get inbound traffic. You'll start to get invites from people in that industry that want you to sponsor stuff. You'll start to get speaking engagements in that industry where you can teach people about risk and insurance. And once that happens, you're in. You have made your way into that industry. Then you can start to identify if you don't have all of the right markets. If you've got enough markets, but not the best markets, then you can have leverage to say to a territory person for a carrier that you want to write, I believe you're a great fit because we specialize in writing X, an industry, a specific profile of insured. And when a carrier knows that your marketing efforts align with their appetite, they're a lot more likely to consider you for a contract. There are still carriers out there writing. We picked up a Hanover contract just 2 weeks ago, and it was a matter of right place at the right time. But we haven't ever had Hanover, and now we do. So we have now 7 direct commercial contracts, a whole bunch of insurtechs, and a whole bunch of brokerage and wholesale stuff. We only have 7 direct contracts, and I'm perfectly okay with that number. We can keep that number pretty happy on an annual basis. If we had 15 or 20, maybe not. So that is how you break into commercial. Once you've done that, then you can just rinse and repeat. Now, I know I'm skipping some steps here because I want you to come back next week in next week's episode where we're going to talk about exactly how we came to dominate the real estate investor world. How Riskwell has now, as of this point, written more than 27, almost 28,000 properties in the last 5.5 years with a staff of less than 10 people, only 3 of which actually work in real estate insurance directly. That's next week's episode. But that's all for this week's episode. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. What's on your mind about getting into commercial insurance? If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to drop me a line, podcast@jamesjenkins.com, or you can hit me up on social. Facebook or LinkedIn is where I hang out most of the time. That's all, folks. Make it a great day, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk to you again real soon. Y'all take care.